Good morning, everybody. Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet on Tuesday, the 21st of November from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. This meeting is being live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please, can everyone ensure that their mobile phones are on silent, and can I remind members to use their microphones? In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please note that there is a fire alarm test scheduled for 10:15 this morning. Can I welcome members of the public to the meeting this morning? We will invite you forward when it is time for you to make your contribution. Turning to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I don't believe we have any. The second item is membership of cabinet bodies. And again, I don't think there's anything to discuss there either. The third item is disclosures of interest. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I can like to disclose a personal but non-pecuniary interest. I'm a councillor at Hampshire County Council.
Thank you very much indeed, and I will make the same personal but not prejudicial declaration of interest as a Hampshire councillor. Any other declarations of interest? No, if you need to make one, you can make it on the specific agenda item. The next item is a list, just quickly to note, requests from councillors to make representations on any particular agenda item. On that, I have councillors Lee and Horrell on item 8, councillors Wallace and Godfrey on item 9, and councillors Wallace and Horrell on item 10. Item number 5 is public participation. 2 members of the public are down to speak today on items later in the agenda. Mr. Tate wishes to speak on item 8 and item 10, and Mr. Chafe from TACT wishes to speak on item 10. The next item on the agenda is agreement to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of October 2023. Cabinet, are you happy for the minutes to be signed as a correct record? Agree. Thank you. So the first item of substantive business we have today is the refurbishment and conversion of shared accommodation for the use of. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. The next item on the agenda is leader and cabinet members' announcements. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to say that extra park and ride services are now in operation over the Christmas period until the 21st of December, with an increased frequency of buses to the park and ride car parks Monday to Saturday, and a free shuttle bus between the East Park and Ride car parks and the Broadway on Sundays. Park and ride charges remain very economical at £3.50 all day, £3 after 10:30, and with queues frequently building up in our central car parks at this time of year, it really is much easier to park in the either park and ride or park and walk car parks rather than driving around the city centre hunting for a space.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lerney. And Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, 2 announcements to make. The first one, a final shout out to all those watching and listening to say that our second Jobs and Opportunities Fair is taking place this coming Thursday at the Leisure Centre. It runs from 10 a.m. in the morning to 1 p.m. and it really is a great opportunity for job seekers to come along and talk to a wide range of employers to find out what opportunities are available. So setting up stalls in the morning amongst others will be Peter Symonds and Sparsholt Colleges, Hampshire Police and the South Central Ambulance Service, together with many more. There will also be advice on putting together a CV, and information and support about the rise in the cost of living. So do come along to the Leisure Centre, and whether you are interested in exploring what is available on the jobs market, or maybe start a new career path, or perhaps you just need some advice, we will be very happy to see you there. Second announcement is last week we invited applications from our districts, rural towns and villages to apply for a share of the next tranche of money from the Rural England Prosperity Fund. Organisations can apply for £15,000 up to a maximum of £40,000, which can be used to fund a variety of activities that support business growth or help provide a better service to our communities. So whether it's upscaling a kitchen cupcake business, installing EV chargers or improving wheelchair access, this funding is a fantastic opportunity for growth and improvement in our rural areas. And to help those who are interested in submitting an application but perhaps don't quite know how to go about it, we are holding a surgery next Monday on the 27th of November from 10 AM to 4 PM to enable those interested to explore ideas in a little more depth and find out if they are eligible. So to find out more and book your slot, go to the grants section on the City Council's website. The deadline for completed applications is the 5th of January 2024, but we would really like to encourage organisations to apply as early as they can, as the fund is a competitive one. All expenditure must be complete and the projects fully delivered by the 31st of March 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Thompson. Any other announcements? The next item on the agenda, this time correctly, is the refurbishment and conversion of 59 Colebrook Street to shared accommodation for the use of Ukrainian and Afghan guests. Councillor Westwood, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. This paper outlines the proposal to bring back into use 59 Colebrook Street, a property that's just around the corner from where we're sitting, but currently empty and not in use, to provide temporary accommodation for guests on various government resettlement schemes. We're seeing in other authorities an ever-increasing demand for temporary accommodation. 59 Colebrook Street has been identified to meet the need for temporary accommodation. It would be one of the 2 units of temporary accommodation we need to procure under the government's local authority housing fund. The property is in a good central location to enable access to training and employment and is near all transport links. Single households make up the largest number of homes for the Ukraine cohort in the district of Winchester, and it's expected that the council's use for this property will be for predominantly Ukrainians. There is still uncertainty as to whether hosts will receive funding from April 2024, and Winchester currently has 62 single Ukrainian households with hosts, so this project is both timely and likely to be needed. The property would enable individuals on the resettlement schemes to live alongside each other, providing support and assisting them with the continuing integration into our community. The council's resettlement team would continue to support the occupants of this property during their residence there. Once the property is not needed for households on the resettlement scheme, it can be used for general temporary accommodation within the council's stock. Funding for the conversion is from the following sources: £250,000 from the Hampshire County Council Homes for Ukraine Fund, £206,000 from the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 2 funding that was successfully bid for and won by this council, and £154,000 from prudential borrowing. To comply with the Local Authority Housing funding, we must be in contract by the 29th of March 2024. This is a sound investment that can help with short-term pressures and be of real value in the longer term. I hope we can all support this.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Westwood. I now have a deputation from Mr. Tate. So if you would like to come forward and use the microphone in the public participation section.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address Cabinet. I'm speaking today regarding 59 Colbrook Street. I know this property pretty well as it's located in St Michael Ward. I walk past it every day. Over the years, it has been used as to house a variety of people, from those who have been homeless to staff at a local restaurant. I'm staggered that the council is seeking approval to spend 610,000 to refurbish a property which has been left empty for over 2 years. It has already been used as an HMO, so why is it costing so much to bring it up to an acceptable standard? Accepting that the bulk of the funds are coming from Hampshire County Council and the government fund, I still have to wonder how the council has let this property get into such a sorry state. In May this year, I raised the issue of a no-fault eviction at 88 Sussex Street. This is another property owned by Winchester City Council, albeit rented to Bournemouth Churches Housing Association, who have let the 2 flats as temporary accommodation, although the guy in there's been there for 25 years. The ground floor flat is empty, and that's been 2 years, but as far as I can establish, at least Bournemouth Churches aren't serving another Section 21 eviction notice. I previously questioned why 16 Tower Street was left empty by the council for 4 or 5 years. Then a flawed planning application was submitted to split it into 2 flats. After securing permission, they sold it. You sold it at auction for 418,000, although it's on the market through Hamptons at the moment for 675,000. I do worry that the council isn't looking after its assets well enough, and rather than refurbish 59 Colbrook Street, the council should just sell it and buy a property elsewhere. There's another property in Colbrook Street on the market for 4.75 million. I walked past the owner as I came into town today. You're looking to sell Barnes House. I don't understand why you're not seeking money to do up Barnes House at huge expense. You could buy a house for 610,000. You already own the existing property. I'm just concerned that there's no consistency with the council's approach to a number of properties which are vacant and have been empty for some considerable time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. We now have Councillor Lee. If you could come and make some comments, make your comments.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. Good morning, everybody. It's good to hear some good news during a world of omni-crises, whether that's cost of living, war, housing, refugee, climate and nature. And therefore I welcome the Council's plan to provide temporary shared accommodation at Colbrook Street for Ukrainian single households who no longer reside where they host or use their current accommodation under the government resettlement scheme. Before asking some questions about Colbrook Street, it's worth emphasising that too many lives are being ruined by the failure of successive governments to build the homes we need. There's a long list of changes needed, whether it's raising local housing allowance, frozen for many years, plus of course not enough homes being built to replace those being taken out of the social housing stock, and so on. So good to see as a council we're getting on to help fix some of the local housing problems with this initiative, along with others under the council plan for delivering homes for all. I therefore fully support bringing our vacant council-owned properties back into use. And very importantly, for the housing crisis, it helps to address the district's lack of affordable accommodation and avoids our guests being threatened with homelessness. Of course, the economic woes of inflation and rising material costs in the construction sector will limit the degree of refurbishment at Colbrook Street. Enormously difficult to see how it's hard to treat ancient building being accredited to passive house standard, which if possible would of course mean zero running costs almost and lowest carbon emissions with benefits to occupants, plus the climate and nature crises. So my first question is, what for the money that we're spending is the refurbishment standard that the Cabinet is expecting to achieve at Colbrook Street? A thought in terms of future-proofing these balanced crises is striving for quantity rather than quality in our housing programme may not be a smart move to achieve better standards for the crises I mentioned. So saying this points to some concerns about use of materials in the context of energy efficiency and the climate and nature crises. So my second question is, can I ask for the Cabinet to consider direction to council officers for changes in our procurement policies to specify more compliant and less harmful insulation products, for example, in retrofit contracts in view of our climate and nature emergency declarations and resolutions? It would have not gone unnoticed by Cabinet members that we are pushing our earth systems past many tipping points for these emergencies. We can make a small difference to these crises. It is the right thing to do. We really need to balance the social, economic, environmental pillars more evenly in our thinking and action. And forgive me for also pointing out, there are alternative natural, organic, inorganic insulation products choices widely available for those shown, in contrast to those shown recently in the Council's Join the Retrofit Forum video, which was highlighting a high carbon energy fossil fuel manufacturing product. Frankly, I don't think that's a particularly good look during the declared emergencies. I will therefore share with officers and the Cabinet Member for Housing information from the Centre for Alternative Technologies, which I think will help to address some of the issues and concerns that I've raised with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lee. And Councillor Horrell.
Chair, good morning, and thank you for allowing me to address Cabinet today. As you will have assumed, I am in favour of making more homes available for our residents who are on our housing register and those we're supporting from overseas, such as our Ukrainian guests. Bringing a council asset back into use and delivering rental income on a property that has been costing the council for the last 2 years is clearly a good thing. However, I'm confused about the current administration strategy. This will be a house of multiple occupancy, and I understand local members are happy with this. However, just a few months ago, we were about to adapt a house in Winnell for the very same purpose for Ukrainian guests, and I was advised we were not prepared to do this. Is the HMO strategy for Ukrainian guests different by area? There seems to be a lack of consistency. We also have a property in Eastgate Street that again was suggested for Ukrainian guests in the same way, but this has not come forward. So why 59 Colebrook Street and not the other opportunities at this time? Or are the others still possible? That would be welcomed, I'm sure. And given the current need for temporary accommodation across the city. Clarity about what is acceptable would be helpful so we can all understand where our Ukrainian guests are being allocated. Chair, you also have a newly renovated property set up again for use by Ukrainian guests at 163 The Broadway, which has stood empty since February of this year. Another council asset not being utilised. What is the intention with this property going forward? Can this be offered for our guests or indeed for other residents who are in need of accommodation? If not, what will we be doing with this asset? And Chair, finally, in Appendix 1, is it realistic to assume that 59 Colebrook Street will have no further repairs or refurbishment requirements in the 35-year lifespan of the project? What is the 303,000 indicated under expenditure that is in that appendix? If you could help us to understand that, that would all be beneficial, I'm sure, to all residents and all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Westwood, do you want to address those, or are some of them ones you'll pass to Mr. Hendy?
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to make an attempt to address the majority of this, if I may.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. And I may well refer to Mr. Hendy on one or two specific points of detail. Okay, so Mr. Tate, thank you for your comments and views on taking this forward, this proposal forwards. This house was, as you correctly stated, used as an HMO. In fact, it was used as a bed sit, I was told, and it was left vacant in round about 2019. So that property has been vacant for the last 4 years. And I think, as we all know, if you don't use something, it does deteriorate quite quickly. And you just look at the building on the outside and you can see the standard of the interior as well. So it is not going to be a low-cost job to bring that property back into use. I will add that the roof on that property needs replacing as well, so it's not watertight and there's quite considerable work to be done on that property. So the cost is the cost to bring that property back into use, whether it's used for this purpose or any other purpose. In terms of 88 Sussex Street and 16 Tower Street, I accept your point that there is possible accommodation there, but we felt that we needed a larger accommodation to get a number of people together, because these are people that are in the same position. They're all people that have been displaced by the war in Ukraine, and to have 6 in a location together is better to have 3 in one location, 2 in another, and so on. So that's why the choice was made on this particular property for this number. You point around selling the property and buy elsewhere. Within the paper, it does mention that we own the freehold for this particular site, but we also own the freehold for the sites surrounding that site as well. And it would be imprudent of us financially as an organisation to sell off part of a block of the freehold in this area. So selling it off is probably not fiscally the right thing to do in the longer term for this council, and that we should maintain control of that freehold. Your point on Barnes House, I'm familiar with Barnes House. Barnes House is not used currently. It is a rabbit warren of small rooms. It is single skinned in terms of its outer construction. Its energy performance is abysmal. And it's also on a site which has got garage blocks associated with it, and it's got 2 public rights of way through it. It is a very, very difficult site to redevelop in the way that we would want to redevelop it for social housing. And it is also probably over expensive to retrofit to bring it up to the energy levels, and to change the inside of the building from the warren of small rooms that it currently is into the sort of usable accommodation that we would want. So the decision there, and we've already had a commercial assessment for Barnes House, is that we will proposing to dispose of Barnes House, and that will be discussed later in this meeting. Councillor Lee, thank you for your comments and your support for the route forward with this property. I appreciate that. Thank you. I agree with your comment about government and support for social housing and local housing. And I think that will become evident as we get into item 10 of this particular meeting, and we will cover that point further there. And I thank you for your support for bringing it back into use. In terms of the refurbishment standard, the refurbishment standard is going to be taken within building regulations into EPCC. So in line with the way that we are running our Fabric First retrofit programme across our entire council estate. So that is the level we will take that to at this point in time. And clearly it can be moved from there, but we are keen to get this house up and running as soon as possible, because as I said in my introduction, we are looking at a point where the government may withdraw funding for host families, for Ukraine families, and there are currently 62 single households in this district that are potentially at risk, and we need to be prepared for those people and be able to help them going forwards. So EPCC is the standard that we will go for. And in terms of the change to the procurement processes for the materials used in the refurbishment and more generally across our retrofit programme, I welcome your feedback on that. And we do already have a meeting planned for this coming Friday. And can I ask that you bring that information to me when we meet on Friday? And I will feed that back into Mr. Handy and Mrs. Knight into the retrofit programme as well, and look at the applicability of taking forward some of your ideas on alternative technology for use in the retrofit programme. Going to Councillor Horrell. I'm pleased that you're in favour of more homes being available, because that is the objective of all of us, I think, in the council, and certainly you and I, in terms of our interest in this particular area and our council housing. And bringing this property back into use will generate revenue. This is a proposal that is fiscally sound. If I refer to your point, I will go to Mr. Handy for the specific number at the end, but the financial plan for this property includes the maintenance of that property over the periods going forwards. But I will come back to Mr. Handy for to tell us about the figure that is in the report that you referred to. You talked about the home in Winnell and not being converted to HMO standard and or HMOs. I'm not familiar with that, and I'm also I know of the house in Eastgate Street. I don't know why that's not being brought forward. If it's okay, I will have those discussions with the directors, and I will come back to you on that point. And in terms of our strategy for the Ukrainian households, then we do have a strategy. I mean, this council has, over the last year, and I commend the office for this, successfully bid for significant sums of government funding through the Local Authority Housing Fund for round 1 and round 2 that has enabled us to bring into our portfolio 43 new homes, and these are earmarked for the refugees, the Ukrainian and Afghan refugees, and until such time that they are required for that use, they are part of our general housing stock. So there is a clear strategy going forwards. We're well aware of the needs to address the potential problem after April 2024, when this government is not committing to support the funding for host families going forwards, the potential for significant numbers of people requiring accommodation, single person accommodation. Hence the reason for bringing this paper forward at this time. So I would counter your suggestion that we don't have a strategy. I'd say we do have a strategy in this place. You referred to 163 Broadway. Can I please ask Mr. Hendy, is that the property that we discussed? Yes, so that property is actually let and being used, and is generating income for the council at the moment. I've addressed the point on repairs and refurbishment as being within the fiscal plan for this. Mr. Hendy, can I just ask if you can comment on the specific figure of £335,000?
Yes, certainly. Through you, Chair. The appendix actually gives an explanation at the bottom then in relation to the assumptions, and it states for expenditure that the £303,000 over the 35-year period to cover repairs and maintenance and a contribution to major repairs, which is a prudent thing to do, obviously. Just picking up the other points that are made in, is there a different approach to the introduction of HMOs by area? And it's understandable why that might be perceived to be the case, but it certainly isn't. What we're trying to do is to ensure the council gets the best return from its assets, either general fund or housing revenue account assets, which is why we decided not to proceed with the property in Winnell. We have another HRA asset which we can bring forward to meet the needs of Ukrainian households, which would be more economic to do. The question also on why 59 Colebrook Street, I think the report makes the case very clearly. We've been able to achieve £456,000 worth of external subsidy from the council to help towards the cost of refurbishing that property, and that allows us to keep the rents on that property at local housing allowance levels. So without that level of external subsidy, it would be very difficult to bring that property forward to meet that particular need. Councillor Westwood's already mentioned 169 Broadway, which has been let on a commercial basis. That's why we're not progressing with that particular property, which originally was proposed to be let to Ukraine households. I think that answers all the questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Westwood and Mr Hendy, for that very comprehensive response. Cabinet, are there any other questions that people would like to ask about this paper? Councillor Becker.
Thank you. The paper refers to shared accommodation. Does that mean shared bathroom facilities? And if so, are we expecting that it will be one gender living there? And if not, how will we manage those issues that may arise? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. In terms of the accommodation, there will be shared bathroom facilities within this accommodation. This is fairly common within temporary accommodation generally. The accommodation will be determined by demand as to actually goes in there, but it's the intention that it will be single sex. It's likely to be female, as that is the majority of the single households that we have within the host families for Ukrainians at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any debate? I don't know who was first. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you. I very much welcome bringing this building back into use. It is a bit of an eyesore at the moment. And as we know, there is development going on across the street, so it will soon be the worst house in the street, which is not something that we want to own. I very much welcome the use we're making of this house, and I would also support the concept of keeping our freehold land together. We've ended up spending an awful lot of money over the road in central Winchester, bringing back land that we used to own into council ownership because it's been sold off piece by piece over the years rather than taking a strategic approach. As they always say with land, they don't make any more of it.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yes, really just to fully support what Councillor Lerney has said. She's stolen my thunder because I was going to make exactly the same points. We all know when we walk past that building, it's in a really dilapidated state, and it will be fantastic to see it being brought back into use and fully refurbished. And I think it absolutely is the right use for this building, and I'm sure all the tenants that do eventually move in will be delighted to be there in such a central location. So I'm very happy to support this, and pleased to see that we will be refurbishing it to a high standard too. Thank you.
Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I'm going to look at this from a slightly different point of view. I think it's really great to be welcoming temporary accommodation that will be warm and dry for those seeking accommodation. It's a really central location. It's close to where we can be supporting people, which was really amazing and a really good thing to do. Also, I do know that many families in the area are currently still housing Ukrainian, and there are Afghan families coming in too. The sense of guilt if you can't find them somewhere to live is enormous. I'm involved with a family only this weekend, and I just know that they're really pleased to see that the mother and daughter are safely ensconced in new accommodation. So from my point of view, as building a community, this is really important that we have central Winchester accommodation, which is convenient and also relatively cheap to live in comparison, and very much a warm and dry accommodation, showing that we really do welcome our guests rather than just tolerate them.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Westwood, any final comments?
No, thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, colleagues. And thank you for the comments made in debate, and thank you to councillors and members of the public for the challenge that they've given us. I would share completely Councillor Porter's views about the great debt that we owe to the families that continue to support our Ukrainian guests. And I never want to miss the opportunity to thank them for the contribution that they're making to the community on behalf of the community in so doing. And it strikes me that this is a proposal that makes a great deal of sense. It's a high quality improvement to our city centre. It's going to cut carbon and cut bills, and it's going to support those in need. And on that basis, I think it's an excellent proposal and something that we should be very pleased to support. The recommendations that we have in front of us are that we as Cabinet recommend to Council a capital budget of 610,000 to refurbish 59 Colebrook Street, to provide for temporary homeless accommodation, funded by 250,000 from Hampshire, 206,000 from the Local Authority Housing Fund, and 154,000 of prudential borrowing. So this proposal will go to Cabinet. And then, assuming or subject to Council agreeing with that budget, we're then authorising the expenditure of 610,000 for the refurbishment, delegating authority to the strategic director responsible for housing to approve the tender evaluation model, delegating authority to the strategic director to appoint the preferred contractor following a competitive procurement process, and delegating authority to the service lead for estates to enter into all relevant agreements, negotiate the contractual arrangements and see them to completion to enable the conversion and refurbishment to contract to be executed. Cabinet, do you agree with those proposals?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the general and thank you, Ms. Thorburn and Mr. Todd, for coming forward, and apologies that we didn't call you to the debate, but we do appreciate the work that you've done to get us to this point. The next item is the General Fund budget options and medium-term financial strategy. Deputy Leader, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. The public sector is currently facing the most significant financial challenges and demand pressures in living history, with many particularly upper tier or unitary councils warning that they may have to issue Section 114 notices in the near future, and 52% of district councils warning they will have to use reserves to produce a balanced budget this year. This medium-term financial strategy sets out our approach for managing our limited financial resources to protect our core council services and enable delivery of the council plan priorities going forward. Careful financial management and planning means Winchester's immediate financial position through to 2026 is sound and stable. However, Winchester is no exception to feeling the same financial pressures as other councils. The medium-term financial plan in Appendix 1 shows a projected annual budget shortfall of £3.4 million per annum in 26-27, rising to a shortfall of £5.7 million in 28-29. This is an increased deficit since the £3 million gap reported this time last year, and is primarily due to new responsibilities put onto district councils, particularly the opportunity to significantly increase our recycling rates. We have a window of opportunity to steer the council to financial sustainability for the future. We're putting in place robust measures to address the medium-term budget challenges. TC25 is an organisation-wide transformation programme to seek out and to deliver transformational changes to the way we deliver services in order to save at least £3 million within 3 years. We want to transform our services to save money but also to digitalise and reduce the services' carbon impact. We're looking to make services more accessible and to make online access simpler, quicker and easier. We want to enable the majority of customers to access services 24/7, not just during traditional opening hours. By doing this, we can prioritise telephone and face-to-face service for those most vulnerable customers who really need that. We want to encourage paperless services such as e-billing to reduce both the cost of the council and the carbon impact caused by printing and posting. Cabinet are being asked to approve the assumptions that will be used to prepare the detailed 24-25 budget that will be brought to council in February. These include investing in greener, faster measures such as HVO fuel for council vehicles, more recycling, the introduction of food waste, and encouraging customers to choose to go paperless. We will be investing in transformation so we can digitise and modernise our services. We need to set aside additional funding for unavoidable budget pressures, such as the cost of providing temporary accommodation to prevent homelessness for our most vulnerable residents. The paper also details the assumptions in relation to service income budgets, of emerging capital budgets and adequacy of reserves. I welcome questions on this paper and look forward to Cabinet accepting the recommendations proposed.
Thank you very much indeed. We don't have any public deputations on this item, but we do have two councillors who wish to make comments. The first of those is Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Feels strange to be asking for a report to be approved by Cabinet when it has not had the opportunity to be reviewed by councillors at the Scrutiny Committee. Ironically, section 6.3 of the report actually states that this plan will be reviewed by Scrutiny ahead of Cabinet decision making. Unfortunately, this has not happened. So apologies if some of these questions are perhaps a bit more technical, but has not been another opportunity to ask them. There's a lot in this plan. However, firstly, there appears to be an omission. At the last full council meeting in September, this council declared a nature emergency. Part of that declaration included a commitment to consider the impact on nature's recovery in all strategic plans, policy areas and decision-making processes. However, there is nothing about nature recovery in this plan. Hopefully, this is just a timing issue which will be corrected in the next version of this report. Getting to some of the specifics on the garden waste service. What profit is the council forecasting to make on the garden waste service in 23-24 this year? My understanding from the question I asked last year was that the service is intended to be cost neutral, but per section 12.2, the council is now expecting a profit. Please, can you explain? On car parking charges, section 13.10 states that prices will be frozen in the Winchester car parks. Why? Freezing charges in one area means that charges in other areas have to be higher to compensate, or else the council shortfall will continue to grow. Is the plan to recover the lost revenue from car parking by increasing council tax? Moreover, earlier this year, the administration increased Sunday parking charges nominally to address air quality issues. Now, instead of continuing this approach, prices are being frozen. This strategy seems somewhat muddled. Is the new plan to freeze car park charges simply a pre-election gimmick in response to the negative press that the administration has received regarding Sunday parking charges? Waste collection. Lots of new costs are associated with changing waste collection. These need more detailed review, which will hopefully happen as part of tomorrow's Scrutiny Committee meeting. However, I'd just like to query why a £1.5 million cost is not being included in the Appendix 1 costs. Part E of section 14.2 states that earmarked reserves will be allocated, but surely this should be reflected in the pack that is before us. However, clearly the biggest issue in this report is that worryingly, the shortfall appears to have almost doubled in the past year from 3 million to almost £6 million per year. The report itself describes this as a looming crisis, and to quote this report, to date, the Council's Transformation Challenge project has provided essential learning for the next phase of this work, but not significant savings. What reassurance can the administration provide that they have a credible plan to deliver the savings that are needed? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you very much. I've been reassured on several occasions by Section 151 officer about the medium-term state of council's finances. This paper explains very clearly why she does not see that financial risks facing the council are particularly high over the next couple of years, as funding from government remains. This administration has been squirreling away large amounts in reserves to deal with the uncertainty of longer-term council funding. However, given the continued uncertainty, which has been largely of the same degree for the last 10 years, there continues to be the cliff edge in a couple of years' time. We can hope that the government will come to the rescue, but this would be unwise, as this paper warns. Basis for a new funding arrangement will probably be needs-based, so action needs to be taken to prepare for greater self-sufficiency. This paper gives us our first look at what the Strategic Budget Review, TC25, might provide. I would like to know when councillors will be given the opportunity to find out more about TC25. On the detail in this paper, there is little to give me confidence that it will deliver £2.5 million or more per annum, but it needs to provide to bolster the income stream in the general fund. I'm too hot for you, too hot. Thank you for your calmness. Yes, I'd like to know when councillors will be given the opportunity to find out more about TC25. I'm worried that it doesn't, in the detail of the paper, give me any confidence that it deliver the significant amounts of money required each year to bolster the council's finances. This administration still seems reluctant to develop new streams of income, apart from by raising charges. I see none of the big ticket items that are required to prepare the council for a substantial reduction in government funding. When the Conservatives ran the council, not only did we also maintain services on a balanced budget with solid reserves, we put in place major projects that were good for the district and for the council, like the new leisure centre and better use of our non-operational property. We also started planning for leaving the city offices as a major way of reducing our expenditure. I'm glad that finally the council has started to reduce the business rate spend for empty buildings, but much more needs to be done on this. When will we learn more about the administration's plan for the future?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Godfrey, and thank you for your forbearance and for continuing in the face of a loud fire alarm in the middle of your presentation. So, Deputy Leader, do you have a response to the points made?
Thank you, Leader. Yes. Councillor Wallace questioned the fact that this paper hasn't been to scrutiny, but acknowledged that it will be at scrutiny tomorrow. This paper is a preparation for the budget. It is less relevant as to whether the scrutiny takes place before the Cabinet or after the Cabinet. In fact, in the past, much scrutiny took place after the Cabinet decision. But there will be a greater opportunity to scrutinise this tomorrow. Councillor Wallace raised the profit from the garden waste scheme. There is no profit from the garden waste scheme. It still does not cover its full costs. What we are talking about is the income. The figure for the income is increased in the base budget because many of the costs are within the whole BIFA contract. So it's just the income side that we're talking about here. Unfortunately, the garden waste scheme does not achieve its balance yet, which is something we will be aiming for. Similarly, I think there's misunderstanding on the car parking. Car parking will increase by CPI across the district, except for the Park and Walk and Park and Ride car parks. And I hope that perhaps that's not clear in the paper. You talked about the waste collection prices, the costs. In the future, we have indicative figures here at the moment. Obviously, as the it is a major project over the next few years. We've been waiting for rather a long time for government to make decisions. We still have quite complex negotiations with Hampshire County Council before we can entirely bottom out those prices. And I think the point about perhaps one of the risks in the paper is that we have government have announced that there will be new burdens funding for the food waste collection. We are reckoning that we will get no more than 80% of the full cost. It may be lower, but again, this paper is the assumptions we're making with the best information we have at hand for us to prepare the budget for this year. Both Councillor Godfrey and Wallace asked for reassurance around TC25. We have a meeting arranged, the Leader and I, with the Conservative group for next week to talk about TC25, and I hope that will be sufficient to allay Councillor Godfrey's concerns, and we plan to arrange a similar meeting with the Green group for the same purposes. Councillor Godfrey, just to raise your concerns, I think in Appendix 1 we are very clear that we expect government to bring in the fair funding formula in 2 or 3 years, or in 3 years' time, 2.5 years' time, with the reset of the business rates. We've had to put this in our budgets from the very beginning because the indications have always been it's been a couple of years away. And we continue to have to do that. We assume damping on that reduction because, as you can see from Appendix 1, it's a reduction of £4 million on our business rates, if that's reset. And so we're expecting 3 years tapered sort of relief on that. I don't think I dispute your view that we haven't recognised and we're expecting government bailouts on this. We are specifically saying we need to address this deficit in 3 years' time, which is what the TC25 process is all about. So I hope we can reassure you in our meeting next week on the details of TC25, but necessarily, because this is a no holds bar look at all our processes, at this stage, we can't divulge all the details of what's being put on the table until we've assessed everything, because it is very difficult to go public on something. If we're asking people to think outside of the normal convention, we need to be able to assess that before we go public with it. So I think that covers everything, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. Do you want to, or maybe I can make some comments on the process, which Councillor Wallace talked about, and this is part of an ongoing journey for how we do the budget process, and in fact, it's been quite usual. So it's important that this is not seen as a single paper that is being agreed in isolation. What we have in front of us today is a process that takes us towards the budget proposals that we will be agreeing in February. This is outlining the principles. We're hearing the points that are being made, and that is completely appropriate, because that will then flow forward and be reflected and be minuted in terms of how we handle the future stages of the process. So all the comments that are made today will be reflected in the budget paper in terms of its discussion of both the principles set out here, but also the comments that are made along the way at scrutiny, at today's meeting, so that when the full paper comes forward, the scrutiny views are fully reflected. And indeed, historically, this has very often been a paper that has post-scrutiny, precisely because it is part of a journey towards the budget paper. So it's, if you see it as a very, very early draft of the principles of the budget paper that we'll be discussing in February, that gives you the right framing to understand how this particular process is happening. Cabinet, do you have any questions on this paper? Councillor Porter.
Yes, and perhaps this is something that the public may appreciate. In paragraph 13.4, you describe the council tax limits at 3%, but the £5 limit is likely to remain now lower than, which will bring an income of lower than 3%. Would you like to explain the implication of that for our budget, please, particularly if that £5 limit continues in the next 2 or 3 years?
My understanding is that it's the £5 limit or 3%, depending on which is higher. And now the 3% limit is higher than the £5. So for many years, £5 was the limit that we kept to. And now the limit is 3%, because 3% is slightly more than £5. So that's maybe it wasn't clear in the paper, but that's the reality. It is, the referendum limit is £5 or 3%, whichever's higher. And now for us, 3% is marginally higher than £5.
But can I just confirm that council tax is expected to be remaining well below inflation?
Yes, with the arrangement, because of the town's forum precept, we are usually about 0.5% below that limit for the general district precept. So the figure is likely to be at 2.5%. I think I'm correct. Yes, and therefore will be significantly below inflation.
Mr. Keys, you want to provide some extra perspective?
I was only going to add that the general level of inflation that the council feels as it's purchasing goods and services is usually around the CPI level, which is 6.7%. So our costs are increasing annually, largely by over 6% at the moment. So obviously a 2.99% increase in council tax is significantly lower than the cost pressure we're experiencing.
Thank you very much indeed. And while we're clarifying matters, it's important to stress that the council tax collected by Winchester City Council, only a relatively small proportion of it goes to the City Council itself. And if, for example, you live in Denmead, you may well be paying more to your parish council, which isn't capped. And obviously the amount collected by the county council is about 10 times as much as is collected for the City Council. Is that? And also has a higher cap, so is likely to go on faster. Are there any other questions that people have about this this particular paper? Any debate? Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I think in the context of where many other councils are, talking about Section 114 notices, this budget paper is actually good news. We're talking about decarbonising our vehicle fleet. We're talking about introducing food waste collection and improving recycling. And although we will have a real challenge with regard to our TC25 agenda, it is looking manageable, which I think is important. I will say, with reference to needing to have transition funds and reserves, that although the announcement of the simpler recycling framework by government has put us in a position where we can move forward with that food waste service and an expansion in the range of materials we can recycle, the government proposals are not the twin stream system anticipated by county and districts. So there is fresh modelling work to be done. There's uncertainty about government funding, not just around new burdens, but around the amount of income that we as a district will receive from extended producer responsibility. And we also need to consider the final arrangements for the Eastleigh MRF, which is likely to be put back because of the need to reconsider what form the waste streams are likely to be delivered there. So it is important that we do maintain that flexibility within the budget to ensure that we can introduce a really good recycling system going forward for our residents. I'm really pleased to say that we've had over 8,200 responses now to our waste and recycling survey, and that's going to be incredibly helpful for us in designing the new service going forward. I am looking forward to seeing Councillor Godfrey's proposals for new income streams for the council as part of the budget process going forward. Previously, we've heard a lot about spending lots of money on property, which has got a lot of other councils into trouble, and it's an area where I'm pleased that we haven't. We've been very sensible in continually looking at opportunities, but without overpaying, which is certainly something we've been seeing in the Winchester property market over the past few years. So I very much welcome this. There is still a lot of work to be done and a lot of factors to be taken into account before we hit final budget in February, but I think this is a really good step along the way.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Porter, did I see your hand? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Leader, you described this as a journey, and I fully agree. Thank you to all our officers at Winchester City Council who've looked so critically at their own services they offer to see how they can improve the services we do offer to the public in both our public facing and behind the scenes. So many of the items are areas where we know the world's changing, and to make those improvements we seek, this paper, I believe, gives us the green light to go ahead to seek the detailed information on which we can make decisions and plan. So we want this budget to listen better, go greener faster, and develop better public-facing services. And for me, that's one of the keys, to develop those public-facing services that are better for all of our citizens. So I think this is a really good paper because it gives us the green light to think about where we go and which of those options we reject and which we take forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Porter. Any other cabinet members wish to comment? Deputy Leader, would you like to have any last thoughts?
Well, thank you, Leader. Thank you for the comments from Cabinet. It is clear that there are a number of real challenges in the future that we are addressing. Councillor Godfrey has once again raised that we are supposedly squirreling away money. In fact, our reserve policy is sensible, adequate, as the Section 151 officer would no doubt agree, and gives us enough provision for the transformation that we will be required over the years. I'd like to thank the Chief Financial Officer and Section 151 officer and the finance team for the amount of work they've done on this to this stage, and also for the clarity in which it's been presented, because I think sometimes budget papers can be really difficult to understand, and I think in this case it's very clear. And I hope you can support, and thank you for your support, and I'm assuming maybe that you will support the recommendations. Thank you.
We're about to find out. No, I'd also like to thank you, Deputy Leader, for all the work that you have done with the Chief Financial Officer and her team to bring forward such a strong paper that doesn't just show financial stability going into the future at a time when other councils are facing serious risk of default, but enables us to manage a challenging period of change, both to the waste services that we need to deliver, to the levels of government funding that we're potentially likely to receive, and does so in a way which enables us to continue delivering for local people against the priorities that we've laid out in our council plan. Cabinet, we have a set of priorities, recommendations laid out in front of us. We are being asked to note the assumptions in section 13 of the report and the projections in Appendix A, approve the medium-term financial strategy as set out in sections 13 to 17 of the report, approve that a detailed budget be prepared for consideration by Council in February 2024 based on the assumptions set out in this MTFS, the final spending review announcements, and including the following options. So firstly, in relation to the greener, faster and carbon reduction priorities, including £200,000 a year for carbon reduction measures on waste and recycling vehicles, £1.4 million a year, less assumed 80% government funding to expand recycling services to include food waste collections, £400,000 a year to implement other changes to the collections of recyclables, and £500,000 reduction in line of the proposed Hampshire Inter-Authority Agreement on Waste. As far as the Council's TC25 digital transformation programme is concerned, we're being asked to include £100,000 a year to support, include support and coordination of the work to shift towards a better digital service for local residents. And in relation to services overall, an extra £100,000 a year to be included to fund increased external audit fees. I would like to, in passing, congratulate the financial team for all the work that they've done on our external audit and the fact that we're so far ahead of most other councils on that. NNDR can't remember all the initials, NNDR budgets to be reduced by £177,000 a year to reflect the reduced liability for national non-domestic rates on our buildings, an extra £20,000 a year to fund the increased cost of temporary accommodation, And then in terms of in-year service budgets, make some amendments to reflect revised estimates. So reducing building control fee income by £100,000, land charge income by £100,000, legal service charge income by £50,000, pest control by £50,000, garden waste service income by £90,000, and car park income versus the budget by £100,000. Note that we expect the council tax to increase in line with government referendum limits, which are currently at 2.99% for Band D property. That we increase the annual contribution to the IT reserve by £100,000 for all the reasons we've talked about. That a future of waste and recycling reserve of £1 million is established from the major investment reserve to support the implementation of the new recycling offer for residents. Then, because of the inflation costs that we have on the waste collection contract, under the terms of that contract, we're asked to approve a September 2023 CPI rate increase to garden waste subscriptions with effect from March 2024, resulting in new charges of £45 for a small bin and £69 for a large bin, although we will be increasing the discount for people on concessions to ensure that the price for a small bin remains at £29. So, Cabinet, are you happy to agree those proposals?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to the last substantive item of business before us today, which is the housing revenue account, HRA business plan and budget options. We have 4 people wishing to speak on this today. And 2 members of the public, Mr. Tate and Mr. Chafe, and 2 councillors, Councillor Wallace and Councillor Horrell. Can I ask Mr. Tate to come forward, please?
Thank you, Chair, for again letting me speak at this committee. Last week, I addressed the Cabinet Committee Housing and again repeated my strong recommendation that the council look to buy land. In fact, back in 2021, the council agreed the £10 million fund for such a purpose. I was advised at that meeting that if the council were to start looking for land to buy, this would inflate the potential cost. I have to question why the £10 million was ever budgeted back in 21 and what has changed since then. As it happens, since last week, I've been talking to a number of land agents who are promoting land around Winchester. And what they're saying doesn't actually reflect the comments which were said at the meeting. Yes, landowners would expect an uplift over agricultural values. However, even the failed Hurrah was looking to offer landowners £20,000 to £30,000 a plot. If the council were to look to build at densities of up to 30 dwellings an acre, then that would create a significant land value. And I think there would be landowners interested in that. The report quotes a build cost of £4,600 per square metre. This is an incredibly high figure. And clearly the council is buying properties at significantly below that in Whiteley. I'm a director of the Winchester Housing Trust, as is Councillor Westwood, and the trust are buying properties down in Whiteley. So there is a market for buying properties built to the Association Environmental Consensus Build Standards, so high environmental standards. I have to wonder whether the 4,600 figure quoted in the report is the passive house figure, which would reflect the build cost of Southbrook Cottages, which was extraordinarily expensive. Yes, with higher interest rates and significant build cost inflation, I still think there is an option to buy land, and so the view of the council in 21 may not necessarily have changed. The question, when Andrew Palmer, head of New Homes, answered the points raised at the cabinet meeting, he did make it clear that if you build 100 homes on one site, it's far more cost effective than building 8 homes here or 6 homes there. The trouble with using Section 106 options is that what you're then doing is displacing RPs from delivering those houses and replacing it by the council. So you don't end up in significantly increasing the number of affordable dwellings. If the council were to declare its intention to look to buy land, I think you'd be quite interested to see who came forward. Could be worth a try. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tate, for those comments. Mr. Chafe, on behalf of TACT.
Thank you, Chair, for being able to talk on this. We're on the same journey with you on the HRA. We have been able to look at
This is not a scheduled fire alarm, so I will just adjourn the meeting until need to assume. Mr. Chafe, feel free to start again if you wish, or we'll give you as long as you need, essentially, and do what you want, because we're very keen to hear the voice of TACT on this.
We have the paper on item 10.
We are on item 10.
HRA. We also know the details which I'll go into Business and Housing Policy Committee next week. We're on this journey with you, and we wish to thank the Strategic Director, the Portfolio Holder for Housing, the Head of Housing, Democratic Services and Tenant Involvement on helping us to understand and be able to give a report on this after having met with full meeting of TACT and be able to make a response to Cabinet in January or February. At that point, we do understand the issues. We have been helped, but it is a journey of which we have to join in with. That's all we can say at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for all the work that TACT does to bring the voice of its members to the council's decision making on housing. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Like the previous item, there's a huge amount of information in this budget, and a lot of work has been put in, and it's a pity it's not been through scrutiny before being asked for sign of the Cabinet. But I'll just pick up on some of the main points. The draft HRA 30-year business plan in Appendix 1 shows a plan to increase the debt to turnover ratio from 0.21 in the current financial year to 0.3 in 2031-32. What are the implications of this? Second question, I've got a whole bunch, I'm afraid. Great to see additional £30 million investment into the retrofitting homes for some of our most vulnerable residents. As you know, I've been pushing for more energy efficient improvements to our council homes since I've been elected. So this commitment is a positive step, and I look forward to seeing the improvements starting to be made across the council's housing stock. However, please can you provide more information on how this funding will be used? We need to ensure that we achieve a good balance between the number of houses that are improved and the level or type of installation that's implemented. Next one's on new strategic direction on buying affordable homes. Is there a risk that the new strategy of buying affordable homes from developers actually reduces the number of affordable houses in the district overall? As we know, a certain percentage of all new housing is required to be affordable. Under the previous strategy, the council would build council homes that would be in addition to this affordable housing. So in fact, we had two pots. We'd have the affordable homes and the council homes, council built homes. Under the new strategy of the council buying the new affordable properties from the developers rather than building council homes, wouldn't this reduce the amount of affordable housing in the district overall? Third question, no, next one, fourth, in fact. The proposed move to 80% market rent for affordable new homes. The example presented in the report highlights the cost savings that can be achieved with more energy efficient homes. And that reduced energy costs should offset the higher rent in this example, effectively meaning that the overall cost to tenants is the same. However, it's not clear what commitment the council is making to new homes' energy efficiency. The report simply states the council's energy efficiency requirements. If we're committing tenants to pay higher rent, shouldn't the council be committing to a specific home energy efficiency standard for those properties? Asset disposals. There are lots of questions around this and too many to go into at this time. I hope this will be investigated further at scrutiny. On the sewage treatment works cost recovery, the proposal is for a very significant increase in wastewater costs for private residents. The report talks about consultation. Please, can you provide more details about this consultation? Rent increases of 7.7% are anticipated. Has this been reviewed with tact and indeed by citizens' advice? We're still going through a cost of living crisis and many residents will again be choosing between eating and heating this winter. We have a responsibility to protect our most vulnerable residents, so any increase needs to be done in a responsible manner. Service charge increases are not clear. Please, can you provide more information? What percentage increases are anticipated and what will be the cost impact to tenants? Again, I apologise for a number of questions, but unfortunately there's not been an opportunity to raise these queries before the report has come to Cabinet for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Horrell.
Chair, thank you for allowing me to address Cabinet again this morning and to ask questions. To reiterate what other councillors have said today, it is unfortunate we're having this conversation before the scrutiny meeting, where we would have had a more appropriate forum to have the dialogue and a better understanding of the changes proposed, as opposed to coming to your decision-making session. However, we hope that the scheduling of meetings can be improved in the next financial year to allow an appropriate scrutiny session for one of the most important areas of our work, the budget, at the various stages of preparation. I appreciate it's not just one step at this early stage. I welcome Councillor Cutler's reference to the scrutiny committee tomorrow, and indeed your commitment that any comments made by the committee will be included in the next iteration of the budget. We should be proud of our HRA and the 5,000 plus homes we offer to residents in our district. It is an excellent example of what local government can provide at its best. But I know and understand that the budget will be a balancing act as we come into difficult times. And I thank the efforts made by officers in its preparation so far. And I realise today that the budget options paper raises some key dilemmas for this council. I very much endorse the ongoing commitment to 1,000 new homes and realise that there are some challenges in delivering that outcome. What I would like confirmation of is that we will continue to build our own homes where viability allows us, and that rural schemes will be part of our work, not simply purchasing quantities of homes on large developments, so that we have a good spread across the district as we do currently. It may be a matter of how the paper is written and the language used, but can I ask the budget options makes a more specific reference to the ongoing maintenance of our current properties? I note the additional 30 million for retrofit, but does that actually include the ongoing repairs of all of our properties to maintain decent home standards, knowing that we can't retrofit everyone in the immediate future? In the recent tenant survey, there was a growing dissatisfaction with repairs to our properties. So we need to make it very clear that we care about all of our properties at this time and that we have a schedule of works going forwards. I understand the rationale in the paper for increasing rents to 80% of market rent if you are moving into a new, highly efficient home with low energy costs. But I just want to be absolutely clear that new tenants moving into current properties will not be charged at the 80% level, where they obviously don't meet the EPC rating. Is this a level too that we would consider reducing again in due course when budgets, inflation and cost pressures are more settled? Because obviously we've maintained the 70% level for some considerable time. The other element that I would like some clarity on, please, is at a time when land is a key determinant for new homes, we are considering selling land in section 13 of the paper. Can you help me to understand which types of properties you intend selling over the next 8 years, as this is a new approach for the HRA? And indeed, already today, we've talked about temporary accommodation being needed. And so selling properties at this time seems an interesting twist on that approach. And also, like Councillor Wallace, do you have any more data on the proposed action on full cost recovery for service charges? This is actually quite a complicated area and can be quite costly and very significant for some tenants. So clarity on your intentions would be helpful. A lot of questions, I'm afraid, but I appreciate the efforts made by the team to balance all the needs of both current and new tenants, and hope that the questions raised today will be taken in the spirit that they're intended, because we all want the best outcome for the HRA and its continuing success. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Westwood.
Thank you, Leader. Would you like me to do an introduction, or which may cover some points, or answer these points specifically at the moment, just for process clarity?
Feel free to, why not introduce the paper and address the comments at the same time?
I'll do it in sequence rather than at the same time, but yes, I'll do it in that order. I'll introduce it and then I'll address the comments if I may.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I should have raised my hand earlier, Leader. Okay, thank you, Leader. So we have just heard about the significant financial pressures facing the Council's general fund and the local government sector as a whole. The HRA is experiencing an unprecedented financial challenge. This is of a magnitude never seen in the sector since we took over responsibility for self-financing our social housing business from the previous government subsidy scheme back in 2012. The housing revenue account is operated as a ring-fenced landlord account for the provision of social housing to our tenants. It must self-finance, and to ensure fiscal sustainability, the rents and service charges must be sufficient to fund the expenditure incurred to own, operate and continually invest in these properties. The financial planning horizon for the HRA is 30 years. It must annually produce a viable 30-year business plan to demonstrate its affordability to self-finance and to show it has capacity for ambitions to deliver new affordable homes for people across the district. We are in a period of high inflation, which is slowly receding, with interest rates that are higher than experienced over many decades. In addition, building costs have increased by 23% over the last year and 58% over the last 2 years. The cost of living crisis has not gone away, and it's hitting our most vulnerable tenants hard. We're proud to have over 5,000 homes in the Winchester district. To improve the energy efficiency of our homes, we are investing £45 million into retrofitting the fabric of our council homes to lower tenants' energy costs and to provide warmer and more comfortable homes. I'm able to present today a viable and sustainable business plan, which not only includes investment of £45 million to go greener faster by retrofitting our homes to bring them up to decent homes energy efficiency standards, but also reaffirm our commitment to the 1,000 homes target. We have to prioritise how and where we spend our tenants' money to deliver best value. And it's right that we now have 2 significant work programmes that both improve the quality and comfort of our existing housing stock, alongside delivering the more newly highly energy efficient new homes. The HRA business planning is carried out annually, and all assumptions are revisited and undertaken afresh each year. When the economic situation improves, with interest rates and building costs at more reasonable levels, we will aim to deliver our 1,000 home target earlier, and indeed, I should add that we will look to exceed that target where we can. In order to be viable, the business plan assumes several changes in strategy from previous years. These are detailed in the report, but in summary, they include proposals to continue the new approach of acquiring more homes from developers alongside our previous approach of building new homes ourselves. A move to 80% market rents for eco-friendly new homes, a £400,000 revenue savings plan for the housing service, disposals of surplus assets to help fund the increased greener, faster capital investment in our existing homes, and investment to digitalise and modernise processes to make them more accessible, simpler, quicker and easier for our customers. Also to make it possible for contact to be online 24/7 for those who prefer it. Cabinet are being asked to note these assumptions that will be used to prepare the detailed HRA 2024-2025 budget that will be brought to Council in February 2024. Additionally, Cabinet are asked to approve the future asset disposal policy for the next 8 years, and specifically the disposal in principle of Barnes House in 2024-25. Subject to further consultation and a review of costs, the move towards full cost recovery for private connections to the council's sewage treatment works. The proposal to move rent increases based on CPI plus 1% for shared owners in the HRA, and revert to full cost recovery of tenant service charge, and these were subject to a one-off discretionary limit last year. Despite the challenging circumstances we face, I believe there's a strong plan that addresses those circumstances whilst improving the service and housing we make available to the current and future tenants who rely on them. So, moving to the questions that we had, in light of my introduction now. So firstly, I thank Mr. Tate for his comments, and obviously I'm aware of the comments during the meeting last week around the proposals around land. My comment on that, and I won't go back to last week's meeting, but my comment on land is that it is not just a question of acquiring land. As I've just outlined, building costs are considerably higher, interest rates are considerably higher, and the acquisition of land doesn't equal the creation and delivery of new social housing. It is a combination of the land plus the costs of building and delivering those houses and maintaining those houses in the longer term that needs to be taken into account. So, even if we were able to purchase a significant area of land at this point in time, we would seriously have to look at, could we actually build on that at this time, bearing in mind the cost that you, Mr. Tate, know very well in this particular industry. In terms of the build cost that you referred to, £4,600 per square metre, that is a figure that I've been given by the officers in the New Homes team who do that as a living, and that is the figure that I have for that amount, and it was quoted last week as well. I have no reason to suspect that that is an incorrect figure from the information that I have. You referred to buying properties from developers as being a lower cost per square metre. The principle of ensuring that we buy as many new homes as we can at the moment, in this point in time where building costs are so high, is founded upon the fact that the building industry in general has a real issue, as you are well aware, and many of the smaller and medium-sized builders are struggling with their businesses at this very moment. And if you look in the August publication of Building World, then there are articles that say builders are on a survive to 25 place at the moment, and review in 27. So builders are really struggling. It is a very opportune time for this council, because we are managing our finances carefully within the HRA and do have funds to acquire new homes, to approach those builders at this stage, to agree with them the quality and energy efficiency and building standards that we want from our new homes in our council housing stock, and acquire those homes at a lower square metre cost than we can deliver through building by acquiring land and building our own homes. So yes, the buying costs are lower, and we will absolutely be looking to leverage our position in the marketplace to get best value for money for the funds that we've earmarked for new homes. And I will come to Councillor Horrell's point about building homes outside the major schemes across the district when I'm going to come to answer Councillor Horrell's questions. In terms of the point about using Section 106, displacing the RPs, we do not have enough funds to buy up all quotas of affordable housing across this district. We're looking to maximise value from our own money for our own purposes, for our own tenants, and to provide more affordable housing across the district, owned by the council, delivered with the service levels that we aspire to, which we covered at last week's cabinet housing meeting. So I dispute the point that we are taking and displacing RPs. I think there is more capacity than we can ever take in this marketplace in the district. In terms to Mr. Chafe, I thank you so much for coming along to the meeting, and I thank you so much for chairing and leading TACT. It's absolutely vital that we talk to, work with, engage with our tenant base, and it's important, as you well know, that we take that conversation more broadly across the tenant base as well. And I would like to thank you personally for the commitment that you've shown to TACT, to the council, to your fellow residents over probably decades before I came on the scene. So thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to working with you personally over many more years, and many more of the residents as well. In terms of the journey, then Mr. Chafe talked about the journey with us. We and Mr. Hendy and his team are holding regular meetings with TACT and taking them through in a very hands-on visual way, rather than reams of paper, the options that we have going forwards to balance our accounts and to provide the level of service that you are expecting. And, we heard about one or two of your problems last week. We were at the meeting here. But equally to provide new homes and equally to improve our current stock of homes across the district. And we will continue that consultation through the next few months as we look at the revenue side of our business when the government determines the rent increases or any restrictions that may come into place on that. We will continue that conversation right through to the papers in February with you. So thank you for your comments and your support. Councillor Wallace, I won't address the scrutiny comments. I believe they were addressed by the chair under the previous item. In terms of the, look at Mr. Hendy here, in terms of Appendix 1, the debt to turnover ratio, I just wondered whether you Mrs. Keys, I wonder if you could just make a comment on that, if possible. You can do it now.
Yes, certainly. It's a metric that we've included in the table in Appendix 1, which just it reflects the increased need to borrow to support that investment that we're making in the properties. So it reflects a higher gearing of debt being used to deliver the business plan. But provided that debt remains affordable, and that's what we assess every time we do the appraisals of schemes and investments, then that doesn't pose a risk to the business plan.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Walsh, you talked about the £30 million to retrofit. That £30 million goes alongside the £15 million that we'd already allocated to retrofit in the previous budget, bringing the total to £45 million. And we will be spending that over a number of years at approximately about £5.6 million a year going forwards to work our way through the housing stock. So just to clarify that point, in terms of need to balance house improvements with improvements to our housing stock, that was a sort of key thrust and key point of this particular paper. That and there's a reason why, in terms of the Cabinet Housing Committee, I introduced two standing orders going forwards, so standing items going forwards. One to cover our new homes programme, and the second to cover our retrofit programme across our housing. It's so important that we support our existing tenants and improve those homes. We celebrated 100 years of Stanmore Estate only recently, a few weeks ago, and some of those homes that are 100 years old. We cannot ignore the stock that we have across the Hampshire. Thank you, Dave. Across the district, and so I'm pleased that that is something that you approve of. In terms of reducing the number of affordable homes across the district, in terms of the funding, I get back to the point that I made to Mr. Tate, that with us pivoting to a little bit more spend on buying homes as opposed to building our homes, I think we're actually driving more affordable homes across the business through this strategy, because we are enabling builders to develop phases of projects, or will enable develop phases of projects that they may not have taken forward at this point in time. So I think the strategy of diverting more of our funds into buying homes at this point in time, which is good value for the housing revenue account, will actually drive forwards the higher number of affordable homes in this district rather than impact and lower it. You talked about the 80% rent increase and the efficiency of the new homes, energy efficiency. Now, the homes that we've purchased at North Whiteley are a good example. They are AECB standard, and our local plan going forward has LETI standard. We will always conform with our purchasing and our building to what's in the local plan, which is LETI standard, And the level of performance that I, as the portfolio holder, expect is around that AECB standard, which reduces the carbon footprint by some 70%, and also the energy levels used within the house by 70%. And it's homes that are at that level that we would apply the 80% rent level to. Talk about assets disposal. Mr. Hendy, could you comment on the asset disposal strategy going forward?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. The asset disposal, the report makes the point in Barnes House, we've undertaken considerable work looking at the investment requirements for Barnes House to bring it up to the standards that the council aspires to, and it's just not economic for the council to achieve that, which is why it's being recommended for disposal. In terms of future disposals, and this also picks up the point that Councillor Horrell made, we're proposing to sell off individual plots, which are basically not economic for the council to develop because they're individual plots. We're also proposing to dispose of probably just 1 or 2 properties a year over the next 5 years, where again it's uneconomic for the council to be able to invest the levels required to achieve the EPC standard that's aspired to over the next 10-year programme. So it's very much looking at what's not economic for the Housing Revenue Account to achieve in relation to its ability to invest and achieve the standards that it aspires to.
Thank you, Mr. Hendy. Your next point was around the water treatment works. Now, it surprised me when I became portfolio holder there that we have around 50 water treatment works in our portfolio, which is quite a lot. It is right, and I believe Councillor Horrell also supports this view. It is right that the HRA and the tenants don't support services delivered to private customers, that the services we provide should be delivered at the minimum at cost. And so we want to address the issues we have where we are not covering our costs on our water treatment works. We are aware of the inconsistencies in the way some of the charging is done to a number of households across the district. So it is, as it says in my summary, actually, that we are subject to further consultation and review of costs. We will look to move towards full cost recovery on the water treatment works. We have to go and do our due diligence, understand our costs around our water treatment works, and ensure that they are correct, understand how we're charging, and then develop the route forwards to move to full cost recovery. All right, so that is a piece of work that is still underway at this point in time, but the intention is to move to full cost recovery. In terms of the rent going up to 7.7%, well, that is not confirmed. That's subject to government announcements at the right stage. We are, as you've already heard, in constant contact with TACT and talking to them about the entire position on the HRA account, both the cost side and the revenue side. The service charge increases, and what percentage will they increase? Then the service charges have traditionally gone up in line with the CPI. There was a discretionary last year reduction in the increase in the service charges, and the service charge increases will be determined between now and next February through other consultation and discussions. I don't have a number I can give you today, but that clearly will be in place by February when we go back to the full council. Councillor Horrell, I seem to have lost your questions. Where have they gone?
Thank you.
They're over here. They're over here. Right. So Councillor Horrell, scrutiny again. I referred to the leader's comments in the previous item. I, like you, are proud of the HRA, the 5,000 plus homes, and I agree with your point that the budget is a balancing act. In terms of the 1,000 homes, I am committed to delivering 1,000 homes. Clearly, with the current financial position and the desire to support our residents in their existing council homes and bring them up to better energy standards, I am looking to deliver that 1,000 homes number a little bit later than we wanted to deliver. However, the HRA plan is reviewed every year, and as and when, because these will change, as and when the economic circumstances change, we will look to bring that point at which we deliver 1,000 homes closer to today's date. And but we have to be realistic and pragmatic at this point in time. And I'm unwilling at this stage to divert more money away from the tenants' current properties into new homes to hit a number on a date, rather than look at the best value for use of our funds over the next period, and knowing full well that I absolutely need to drive the retrofit programme with the officers and improve the energy efficiency of many of our current existing homes for all the good reasons we all know about. You talked about the reference to ongoing maintenance impact. One of the areas that has not come up majorly in this paper, but I will talk a little bit more about now, is my relentless focus on driving a better service delivery to our customers, to our tenants, to our residents through our maintenance programme. We need to do two things. We need to make this so that it's a better service delivery to those people. So I talked about investment in the digital services so that we can reach more people more easily using more modern platforms with open information. We can deliver, meet our commitments on dates and times for delivering improvements, and equally that we're making best use of the contracts that we have with our suppliers and ensuring that the service they deliver and the value they deliver to us is the right level of service. So there is ongoing work at the moment to improve those areas, which I will share with you next time we sit down at our one-to-one meetings, in terms of delivering that better service and managing our contracts tighter to get value for money. And going forwards, that will be a focus area for us to deliver upon. There is no impact in this budget on reducing the amount of money that we need to spend to maintain and look after our properties properly. In fact, the budget for that has increased slightly. To answer your point on 80% market rent, it is not intended to apply that to tenants going into current properties. So if it's a new tenant into a current property, that will not be the case. The 80% will be into new homes, which have the much higher energy efficient standard and will deliver significantly lower energy bills to those people occupying those homes. And that's only fair that we do that across our portfolio. I would not want to increase costs for tenants in our existing homes to that level, because we're not giving the energy performance improvements that they see in the new homes. And I think it would be unfair to provide people in those new highly energy efficient homes with a rent and also with the lower energy bills. So I think it's an equitable arrangement and it will apply only to our new homes. The next point was around selling land over the next 8 years, and I think Mr. Andy's answered that point. In terms of the full cost recovery for service costs, I think I've addressed that in my comments for Councillor Wallace's question. And I thank you for your appreciation of the difficulty in balancing this budget at this particular time to deliver new homes, more new homes, to retrofit our homes, to improve our service levels that we provide for all of our tenants and improve the quality of our housing across the piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwood. That was a tour de force. So for covering quite so much ground, both in your introduction and then in your answers. So I greatly appreciate that. Councillor Becker,
Yes,
you wish to declare an interest?
I jumped right in. Yes, apologies, Leader. I should have declared this at the beginning of the meeting, as I am one of these privately owned houses connected to a council sewerage scheme. So I won't participate in the debate on those charges or take the vote on that particular clause.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I will take that particular clause separately. Cabinet, do you have any questions on the paper? Just because I'm not entirely sure Councillor Westwood has had enough chance to answer questions so far in this meeting, and he might want a few more. So any questions? Councillor Porter.
Thank you. We appreciate the building costs have gone up, but other costs have increased as well. Architects' charges, connection to utilities, that sort of thing. What percentage of, or do you know what part that plays in the increased building costs that are coming forward? And does that vary when you're building single properties to when you're building larger numbers of properties, or small amounts of properties compared to large? Is there an economy of scale, particularly on those additional fees, that we have to consider?
Okay, there is clearly economy of scale. My conversations with Mr. Palmer, who heads up the New Homes area, is confirmed that, and some of the comments that have been made in answer to the questions and the questions raised confirm that as well. I mean, prices are going up in different parts of the construction industry at different rates. So repairs and maintenance are 18% up since July 2021. New housing build is 21% up. Other work is 20% up. So, but equally, repairs and maintenance has dropped by 4% in the last year, whereas new housing has only dropped 1.5%. So it depends where you're looking. If you look at and it's probably a question I should have raised when answering Councillor Hall's questions here. If you look at the affordability of building smaller schemes, so if we look at something like Waterloo cottages in Richard Elver, for example, then the cost of building those ourselves, even though we own the land there, is a challenge. It is a point I missed in my comprehensive list of answers that I went through. It is still our strategy to move forwards with taking forwards exception sites and rural sites in terms of new development and smaller developments, but we have to be more innovative about the way that we actually fund these and looking for grants from Homes England, etc. Looking for use of SIL money in various places where that would deliver wider community benefit. So to answer your question, yes, there's a variety of different costs at play depending on the size of the development, the location, and the number of houses we're delivering there.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Any other questions from colleagues? I have a question for Councillor Porter, actually. Can you just remind me of what we put in the local plan about affordability at the proportion of affordable housing? Because I think that's something that people would like reassurance on, that we're moving from a target that was too often missed to a guaranteed level that developers have to deliver.
Yes, we made a very clear decision that we wanted our homes, our affordable homes, to be the same energy efficient quality that all of our other homes would be. So that just as we're bought in white, if we're buying properties or if our properties are built by us, they all have the same insulation levels. And as a result of that, there may be up to 5% reduction in the total number compared to our 40% aspiration. But the aspiration is for all of our sites, and we guarantee that, we will guarantee that when we plan those sites of 40% affordable. There is the difficulty is that there's a cake of money that has to be spent. It includes phosphates, it includes public space, it includes other things, but there is a guarantee of aiming towards the 40%.
I think the point, just to clarify, is unlike the current local plan where developers can argue out of the figure that's in there, we are putting figures in that are guaranteed that they have to deliver, that are agreed as part of the local plan process.
If I can continue, and I completely agree, the number was frequently missed, and I sat in planning meetings when suddenly we're faced with 3 affordable properties in a development of 30, which is incredibly frustrating. The principle of the current local plan is that a site is only agreed if the amount of affordable housing is agreed within that total at the time of being put into the local plan and not agreed at a later date.
Reassuring. So the new local plan guarantees a level of affordable housing delivery in a way that we've not been able to do before. Thank you.
For each site.
Any other questions? Councillor Cutler.
It's not so much a question, it's more to follow on from that comment. I think one of the things we've sort of underplayed is the effect of asking and some demanding higher standards in the houses that we buy in somewhere like North Whiteley. The knock-on effect of the fact that the council houses will be a higher standard to the private houses around. And the amount of pressure that we need to put on the developers to raise their game, I think there is some effect there, and also to the registered providers as well, because we will be providing higher environmental standards and have led by example. And I think that's important. In the local plan, you're saying that all affordable housing will have to be at that level, but between now and then, we've already set the standard to a certain extent, and I think that has some knock-on effects as an example to developers.
If only because it brings up skills, and we want it to bring up skills right across the industry, not just for our own homes, because it's important that our 5,000 homes, which as Councillor Westwood said, and we proudly know that some are nearly 100 years old or 100 years old, we've got a lot of work to do to bring those others up to date. And so there is a balance, but it's good to be developing those skills, and Councillor Lerny, I know, has done a lot of work towards that.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Porter. Any debate? Councillor Lerny.
Thank you. I did want to raise one issue that was mentioned in questions around selling HRA property. This is not a new approach. It's been done ever since I joined the council in 1999, so for well over 20 years. We have sold small numbers of properties which were not standard, not fit for purpose, or too expensive to bring up to decent home standard. The funds raised by that have always been recycled into affordable homes. Prior to us being allowed to build our own homes, it used to be spent in grants for other affordable housing providers to provide affordable housing. So not a new approach. This is actually just setting out more clearly what our approach is going to be towards doing that in future. The energy efficiency of our homes is very important to us, and clearly there are cost implications in that, although over time, as it becomes much more standard, I think we are expecting that the price difference to drop, so that the gap is not so much, particularly as we push private housing developers into building to the same kind of standards that we are doing at the moment. So I certainly would support the idea that we balance out those extra costs with slightly higher rentals for tenants moving into what will be cheap properties to run. that energy efficiency is one of the key things going forward, and I also welcome the extra funds going to retrofit. I'm actually spending the next 2 days at a housing conference up in London, which is focused on net zero housing and how we reduce the energy consumption in existing homes without affecting tenants' quality of life, keeping them dry as well as warm. So we're all spending quite a lot of time on that. I think the Whiteley scheme does illustrate how the approach we've been taking, how the change in approach that we're proposing to look at buying more houses off the shelf, so to speak, can be really beneficial. In effect, from start to finish, it's taken about a third of the time for us to acquire those houses, as for schemes we start ourselves. It's been cost effective. Perhaps the homes aren't exactly what we would have built ourselves, but on the other hand, we are getting people into homes they can afford, not only to rent but also to run. And it's worth pointing out that those homes would have been market houses if we hadn't bought them. So we have actually increased the amount of affordable housing that we've provided as a percentage. Indeed, if you look at the housing strategy, despite our frustrations with some of the sites that were mentioned about us not achieving the levels of affordable housing we would like, we are still achieving levels of affordable housing in this district that other areas are really jealous of, and I think we should be saying that and being proud of it.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Lurney. Any other comments? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you very much. And following on from Councillor Lurney, you just made the point that I was going to make, that actually I think we all really need to shout about the fact that we are a fantastic authority for providing council homes and affordable homes across our district, and we are doing it faster than any other local authority that certainly I know about, and I think we should definitely be rightly proud of that. We've had, I think there's been a fantastic discussion today that this paper has produced, and I'm really happy to support the recommendations. I think we've really shouted loud and clear that this administration is committed to building those 1,000 homes. So therefore, I believe we are investing in our future by building our own council homes or even purchasing them on the open market. And at the same time, we are driving our retrofit programme, which of course helps our existing tenants to live in energy efficient houses that are cheaper to run, and really helping that those tenants that may be looking at their, I'm sure they are looking at their finances and thinking, you know, do we have to choose between eating and heating? But by cracking on with that retrofit programme, we will be helping them out in that way. So very happy to support this paper and the recommendations and the direction that we're travelling in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Paul.
Yes, I just wanted to raise, and it was in answer to some of the points that were made by the speakers, but the important thing as well, I think, is that we are giving security of tenure to people. Many of the properties on the newer estates are often end up buy to let. The security of tenure is not there. Ours will have security of tenure. So once the children are settled at a school, they know they can stay in that school. Once somebody takes up a local job, they know they're secure in that local job. And they know that the rent will be aligned with something that's being watched and managed by the council and by TACT, and they know that what that income could be. And importantly, they will also get support from the council if they're finding life difficult. And those things cannot be underestimated in your quality of life. And I really want to support this paper because this will enable us to continue building homes or taking homes into our estate, not necessarily building them. And I think any way we can do that is is amazing. And going back to the point that Councillor Loney says, I think we're all really proud that the number of homes constitutes nearly 10%, not far off 10% of the homes that are actually in Winchester District, and that is something really to be proud of. Thank you. And thank you to our team as well doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Any other comments? Councillor Westwood, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'd just like to thank the officers for the tremendous amount of work that's gone into producing this paper up to this stage, and the considerable amount of debate that we've had between myself and the officers as well, and views taken on board, and balancing the way we get value for money out of this fund in a way that I believe is beneficial to as many people as possible. I'd also like to pick up on Councillor Loney's point about speed of delivery, and I'm very proud to say that we will complete this year by March. 135 new homes will have been brought into our portfolio this year alone, and that's a fantastic effort by everybody involved. And the retrofit programme has gone from a standing start, and we're now over 100 homes have been retrofitted this fiscal, and we are still looking to deliver and accelerate that further to meet the targets that we've got for next March of around about 500 plus homes retrofitted, and then take that into next year. So thank you for the officers, and thank you for the delivery.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Westwood, and thank you to Mrs. Knight and her team for all the work, and also the finance team for all the work they've done to pull this paper together. As with the previous paper, we're operating in very difficult and challenging circumstances, and yet I'm very pleased that we've kept the commitment to 1,000 houses, but at the same time we're looking to cut carbon and cut bills by improving the retrofitting of our houses, and we're increasing the number of houses at a pace. I compared the figures for other districts. Was very pleased to see, and perhaps not surprised, that we're increasing our number of council houses more than any other district in Hampshire. I then got a bit carried away and discovered that we're also increasing our number of council houses faster than any other district in Surrey, West Sussex, East Sussex, Oxfordshire and Essex, and then I got bored and stopped comparing. But those are all figures to be proud of. So Winchester is leading the way here, something that I will be informing colleagues at the Regional Liberal Democrat Conference on Saturday. Building on a really strong record of achievement, and I'm so pleased you highlighted that the figures this year in terms of the retrofit rate and the way that we're increasing our housing stock. I think it's important also that when we think about our housing stock, I think it's great that we're getting a footprint in the new major development areas, because it means that people who want access to affordable housing and want access to Winchester City Council housing are able to think of more places across the district where they'd be able to do that. I think it would be a real shame if we had any missing spaces where that wasn't possible. So all in all, very encouraging. So colleagues, we have the paper before us today. As previously discussed, this is a paper that is on the journey towards the final decisions that we will make in February, and so we look forward to hearing the views of other committees and groups as we move through the budget planning process, and we'll make sure that those are reflected in our decision making and properly considered. So what we are asked to do here today, and I will for reasons relating to the interest declared, handle some of these recommendations separately. So what I'll do, just for sequential reasons, is we will do recommendations 1 to 8 first, then we'll do recommendation 9 separately, and Councillor Becker will not vote on that point, and then we will do the remaining recommendations after that. So the first set of recommendations is 1 to 8, noting the HRA business 30-year plan, approving the budget options outlined within the report, noting the extra additional investment in the council housing stock of £30 million on top of the existing £15 million to retrofit properties on a fabric first basis to improve energy efficiency. Note the strategic change in direction, moving from a plan based exclusively on direct delivery of new homes to one based on a mixture of acquiring Section 106 affordable housing alongside future development with grant funding and right to buy resources. Note the current viability assessment for new build. Note the proposed move to 80% market rent on new properties to help improve the viability of new homes development and mitigate the increasing cost of development of delivery. Note the revenue savings target of £400,000 over 2 years. Approve the principal disposal in principle of Barnes House in 2024-25, an additional 2 strips of land with 1 surplus HRO property per year over the next 8 years to generate additional capital receipts to help fund increased investment. So those are the first 8. Cabinet, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Recommendation 9. This is the one that Councillor Becker will not be voting on, is to approve the move to full cost recovery for private connections for council sewage treatment works, and note that this will include transitional protection be achieved within a 5-year time frame. And I think we're also obviously mindful of the discussion we had about that. So,
Leader, before we agree that, should that not be subject to consultation?
As per written in the main part of the report, you mean?
Peter, can I assist? Certainly, if you wish to add the word subject to consultation, because the matter, you're approving the principle, but it is subject to consultation. It may be, for instance, that tenants or private occupiers express that a longer term may be preferable. So it will necessitate a change to
I think the set of words in paragraph 13.8, which are subject to further consultation, the terms of individual leases and a review of costs, is perhaps the subject to that will add to the beginning of that recommendation. So take those words from 12 point. So let's just check where we are. 13.8, subject to further consultation, the terms of individual leases and a review of costs, then approve the move to full cost recovery for private connections of the council sewage treatment works, and note that this will include transitional protection and be achieved within a 5-year time frame. Cabinet, excluding Councillor Becker, are you agreed with firstly that amendment and secondly the recommendation as amended?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And we will now cover the remaining 5 points. We are noting at this stage that based on the September 23 CPI figure of 6.7%, that the rent average formula rent increase for 24-25 for all affordable and social housing will now be 7.7%, subject to any government intervention, as happened last year. Approve the proposed move from RPI plus 0.5% to CPI plus 1% for existing council shared owners in the HRA, as well as in all future shared ownership leases. And note that this in 24-25 will effectively reduce rent rises from 9.4% to 7.7%. To approve full cost recovery in tenant service charges in 24-25. To note that officers are currently beginning a review of the current housing management system with a view to evaluating whether it is still fit for purpose or needs to be replaced, as well as beginning work on the reprocurement and the repairs and maintenance contract. And to note that the draft HRA business plan is viable and sustainable and has the capacity to support the council's ambitious delivery of 1,000 new affordable homes over the next 10 years. And over 1,500 in total. So, Cabinet, are you agreed with the remaining recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. We are now into the last straight and just ask to note the forward plan. Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Leader. Just could I add to the forward plan that at the decision day on December the 4th, we will also be considering a contribution to the Jane Austen statute. And I'm also prepared to include on the agenda there some consideration of anything raised at scrutiny regarding the general fund and medium-term financial strategy.
And if maybe perhaps if Councillor Westwood attends and you also cover any comments raised on the HRA as well. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I'm very happy for those to be added. So Cabinet, subject to those additions, are you happy to note the forward plan?
Noted.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the business in front of us today. Thank you all for your forbearance. Thank you particularly to those colleagues, members of the public and councillors who had the misfortune to sit through fire alarm tests. Thank you, colleagues and officers, for all the work that's gone into the papers we've seen